Since you all are very different from the typical audience I speak to, I typically speak to a lot of academics in computer science. Some of you are academics, but not in computer science. I thought I'd briefly introduce myself. I spent 13 years at the National Science Foundation, where I mostly led the cybersecurity research program. And I spent a year in the White House in the Biden administration working on privacy topics. By the way, if you're not familiar with NSF, it's a government agency. If you've ever watched Magic School Bus by yourself or with your kids, if you've ever used something that's called Google, if you've ever used a GPS, you've used NSF-funded inventions. Lots of others too, obvious. I've been at Georgia Tech and the Georgia Tech Research Institute for the past year, leading a cybersecurity research program jointly between GTRI and Pacific Northwest National Labs. The reason I'm here today is that I am involved in the Association for Computing Machinery U.S. Technology Policy Committee, which is a mouthful. ACM is the Professional Society of Computer Scientists, similar to the ABA for bankers or the AMA for doctors. And we do have a Technology Policy Committee, and my colleague Tom Romanoff here is our staff person. You can talk to either one of us if you're interested in joining us. It's open to anybody who is a member of the association. Okay. This is what's called the Tire Tracks. It was developed by the National Academies of Science and Medicine. NASEM, or National Academies, as it's usually called, was founded by President Lincoln with a mission of advising the government on key topics in science and medicine and engineering. This picture comes from a report called Depicting Innovation in Information Technology. It's dated. It came out in 2019. There was an earlier version in 2012. You can get it online, of course. The key point of the chart, which is incidentally hard to read even up close, is that there are several different sections. There are research areas on the left, which are grouped into products and and then they're advanced using the horizontal lines into products and services, industry R&D, and university R&D, into a series of IT innovations in the center, and then those transition into industry, the curved lines, and then those go into applications on the right, things like agriculture, automotive, and health. So what's the point of all this? These green, red, and blue lines on the left side that seem to go from research to innovation, it's a long and winding path. Things don't go directly. Google didn't miraculously happen. There was research in searching for information, and that led into a company. That was actually a relatively straightforward one. But all the scribbly lines, that's not someone scribbling on the slide. The scribbly lines show the movements back and forth between academia and industry. So what does this have to do with the title of the lightning talk, what computer scientists are thinking about? And if we look at the left side, it's what academics are doing now. And these are the information technologies that are going to drive the applications on the right side over the next decade or more. So we have to understand what's going on the left in order to figure out what's going to be happening. And fundamental research is what leads to new products. So from 2012 to 2024, as I said, I worked for the National Science Foundation, leading their cybersecurity program, which was and still is the largest cybersecurity research program in the world. About 1,000 research projects going on at any given time. So I can't talk to you about all of them, but these are some of the topics, and these are some more of the topics that were covered. It's a really big, complex program. So trying to get to what do I think of as the future of cybersecurity, I'm going to talk about two topics. When I interviewed with NSF in 2011, I was asked what I thought the key things were, and I said interdisciplinary research and Internet of Things. I still think that today. Let's talk about a couple specific examples that I think apply to policymakers. Brain-computer interfaces are an example of interdisciplinary research. BCIs exist in many forms. They can be implantable devices. Musk made a lot of noise about this a few years ago. They can be used to treat diseases like epilepsy and depression, or allow patients with spinal cord injuries to control robotic arms. External devices that you wear on your head can support relaxation and mindfulness, and some of these have military applications as well. And this involves computer scientists, electrical engineers, but also social scientists and a lot of other folks. And this is in the process of being commercialized. A lot of this stuff is going on in the academic research space, and a lot of it is transitioning. One study I saw predicted $6 billion in sales by 2032. So why do I care about this? The implanted devices are mostly governed by the Food and Drug Administration, which has historically protected patient privacy. But the external devices are essentially unmanaged, unregulated. They capture a lot of data about you, what you're thinking about, and through AI, I knew I was going to use that buzzword. Through AI, can they figure out what you're thinking about? And can they share that data because of the lack of AI regulation or anything, or data privacy? Can they share that information with insurance companies, with potential employers, et cetera? We already are seeing some amount of this. There have been cases where companies have refused to hire people or have fired people because they weren't thinking about working hard enough. That's a pretty scary thought. If you're interested in the topic, I encourage you to look at the Neuro Rights Foundation. And also, there's a great book by Professor Nita Farhani from Duke University called The Battle for Your Brain. The other thing I want to talk about really briefly is critical infrastructure. We've all seen data centers, and what you may not have seen or thought about much is what's on the right side of the picture, which is small modular reactors, nuclear reactors that can fit on the back of a trailer and be moved around and power things like data centers, or wherever you have a need for power, maybe in a power outage like we've had recently here in the DC area. But there's been very little work going into looking at the cybersecurity issues associated with nuclear reactors, these small modular reactors. And these are critical things that policymakers have to think about along with the technologists, because until we have a plan, what's going to happen is these are going to go into operation before we've really thought it through. They're really not very far along yet. They're really in the infancy. So I don't want to paint a picture that's terrible, but they're coming pretty quickly. I'm about out of time, but what I want to say is if there's power, there's a computer. And if there's a computer, there's security and privacy considerations. And if there's security and privacy considerations, policy is critical. And researchers are a decade ahead of the policymakers. And the policies need to catch up, and catch up soon before it's too late. Thank you very much.